Well, joining us now is former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor at Bondi Partners, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, great to see you again. FBI Director Chris Wray announced this week he will resign in January at the end of the Biden administration, despite having 3 years remaining on his 10-year term. It's interesting, Mick, since Trump was the one who originally nominated Wray for the role after firing the previous FBI director.
It is and it isn't. Keep in mind, Christopher Wray was the head of the FBI when the FBI was in charge of the raid at Mar-a-Lago. And of course, if the FBI sort of stormed your house, you might think differently about the FBI after that event. And certainly Donald Trump did. There's also some evidence coming out today that suggests that perhaps there were FBI undercover agents on the ground during the January 6th riots that was previously undisclosed. So there's a bunch of questions about whether or not Christopher Wray was going to be able to work with Donald Trump moving forward. And obviously, Donald Trump making the nomination of Kash Patel for the position now and not waiting the 3 years that Christopher Wray had under his current tenure sent a very strong message that Donald Trump was ready to move on for Christopher Wray. In our system, Caroline, the president of the United States has the absolute authority to fire the FBI director. That's unquestioned. It's unlike different positions. The Federal Reserve chair, for example, it's unclear whether or not the president has the right to fire him. But the president clearly had the right to fire FBI Director Wray. Director Wray knew that, and I think it was a foregone conclusion he was going to leave either willingly or unwillingly, and he chose to go willingly.
Yeah, I guess you have a point. Someone who orders a search of your premises is not going to makes that position maybe somewhat untenable, I guess. Well, Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg is opposing Trump's motion to have his hush money case dismissed due to his election as president, suggesting the case can instead be put on hold while Trump is in office. Do you think Trump will have any luck here with this one?
Oh, yeah, unlikely. Alvin Bragg is probably more responsible for Donald Trump's reelection than anybody else. Keep in mind, it was cases like this, the hush money case, that put Donald Trump back on the track to return to the White House. Hush money payments in this country are absolutely legal. They happen all of the time. So what Alvin Bragg was essentially trying to do is throw Donald Trump in jail for doing something that is legal. There was a technicality under our election finance rules that Alvin Bragg tried to take advantage of to turn this into a criminal case. So it doesn't surprise me that Alvin Bragg, who was sort of irrational in his pursuit of Donald Trump beforehand, maintains that irrationality now. Keep in mind, he won't be able to pursue Donald Trump during the 4 years that Donald Trump remains in office. But it doesn't surprise me that Alvin Bragg is going to sit around and wait. He hasn't sort of done the right thing here from the beginning. It's hard to imagine why he would begin now.
Well, we'll see what happens with that one. I guess it's a 4-year wait to find out. Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren has been under immense scrutiny after appearing to rationalize the alleged murder of former United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson last week. Now, I played the clip earlier in the show. Mick, what did you make of what she said?
Look, as you know as well as anybody, when you talk for a living, which you do, which I do to a certain extent, Elizabeth Warren does, you're going to make mistakes from time to time. If you go back and you watch what Elizabeth Warren says, you can't help but get the sense, knowing what you know about her past, about her political outlook, about her philosophy of life and capitalism and healthcare, that she was being honest in her first comments and that she simply was facing a backlash that she was unwilling to tolerate. So, look, you could give her the benefit of the doubt, say she misspoke. I get that. She tried to clean it up. But I do think there's a sense here, an undercurrent in Washington, D.C., and more broadly, that Elizabeth Warren was being honest when she said she was probably okay with this. It's disappointing. It's frustrating. It says a lot about where the nation is these days. But I don't think anybody who knows Elizabeth Warren was really surprised by the comments she made originally.
You know, I talked about this a lot at the top of the show, but it's been such an interesting reaction to this case. And obviously we've got this suspect who's in custody now, but to see so many people, especially on the left, come out and seem to sympathize with this alleged killer, what have you made of all of that?
It's unhealthy. It really, really is. I'm all for having a spirited debate about the way we buy and sell healthcare in this country. It's the most perverse and bizarre market that we have. No one understands why things cost what they do. No one understands how health insurance works. I get all of that frustration. But to then take that to violence is the type of thing that typically doesn't happen in the United States. Yes, it might happen from time to time with a truly deranged individual, and it's possible that this particular suspect was indeed mentally ill. There's some discussion here as to whether or not the medical procedures he had been through had driven him to sort of an insanity of sorts, albeit temporary. Who knows? But the fact that there are so many people willing to defend this violence really, I hope, is a wake-up call for both people on the left and the right, that the language we use does and can have consequences outside of the original intentions. And I hope we take advantage of this situation to maybe dial things back. I'll remain to see if that happens or not.
Yeah, so true. Well, Senator John Fetterman, someone we've spoken about and praised many times on this show, has made serious waves by becoming the first Democratic U.S. Senator to post on Donald Trump's platform, Truth Social. His first post reading, "My first truth, the Trump hush money and Hunter Biden cases were both BS and pardons are appropriate. Weaponizing the judiciary for blatant partisan gain diminishes the collective faith in our institutions and sows further division." Mick, what did you make of this this post?
Fetterman is a fascinating study in American politics right now. He's one of those people who really is quite plain spoken, and what he just put in that truth, in that text, sort of speaks to what a lot of people think about what we just talked about. The hush money payments were BS. There's a lot of Democrats who agree with that. There's a lot of Democrats who voted for Donald Trump in the 2024 election because they thought he was being targeted by a weaponized and a politicized Department of Justice under the Biden administration. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me you're talking about Fetterman. We talk about him a lot here because he doesn't seem to fall into those natural sort of columns of Democrat or Republican. Sometimes he sounds like a Democrat. Sometimes he sounds like a Republican. And honestly, I got to tell you, Caroline, it's refreshing in Washington, D.C. to just have people like that around.
Oh, look, it's refreshing in Australia too to have that, because we hear too many people just taking their own side. So it is. But I think a lot of viewers won't agree with what he says about Hunter Biden's pardon. I mean, at one point, Joe Biden himself didn't agree that he was going to pardon him, but maybe they'll respect him for at least speaking his mind.
They do. And the Hunter Biden pardon is just, it's bizarre in many, many ways. Look, a lot of us expected Joe Biden to pardon his son anyway. I know Joe Biden a little bit, but I know Washington a lot. I never expected Joe Biden to allow his son to go to jail. And when he went on, TV here and said that he promised he would never do it, I didn't believe him. It raised a really good question, Caroline. Bill Clinton used to say it's not a lie if you believe it to be true. And there's a corollary to that, which is, is it really a lie if no one believes you? I think most of the Democrats were okay with the pardon. It was the reason for the pardon that's getting Joe Biden in trouble with his own party. If he come out and said, "I'm pardoning my son because he's my son and I love him and I can't stand to see him go to jail," I think a lot of people would be okay with that. What he said, though, was he's pardoning his son because he was targeted by the Department of Justice. What does that mean? It means Joe Biden is admitting that the Department of Justice is politicized. That plays right into what Donald Trump was saying during the campaign, and which the Democrats have denied for several years now. So it's the reason for the pardon, the reason given by Joe Biden, that's creating all of that confusion. And again, it's fun to watch Fetterman sort of cut through all of the BS in Washington, D.C. and get down to what so many people are thinking quietly.
It sure is. Well, Mick Mulvaney, thanks for your time as always.
Thanks, Caroline.